My name's Steve Kessen. I'm our CEO here at Fathom, and welcome to our weekly roundtable series that we have here. So today's topic, as you all know, is an industry focus on higher education. Our last 2 weeks, we focused on a couple of different areas. We had paid media and what's going on in paid media in week one. Last week, we spoke about marketing automation. And today we're excited to really have a great group of higher education marketers together to speak about what's going on in higher education and when COVID-19, the 2025 plateau that's coming and so on. So before we go ahead and get into the content, I want to share a few ground rules for how we best collaborate throughout this next hour or so together. So let me share what we have for those ground rules. First and foremost, we want you guys to participate. We want this to be a great dialogue and conversation all the way throughout. A couple things to help be mindful of, throughout the conversation. If you're not speaking, go on mute. We probably all have a lot of practice in that already. I would also encourage everyone to share your video if you're able. Looks like we've already got 10 folks sharing video today. It's always great to have a face to go with the name. So please share your video if you have the opportunity to do so today. A few technical items to cover. So if you have technical questions or need some help, the chat, we have support there that can help you on the technical items. And then we're going to be introducing polls throughout the conversation. So if you've joined us each of the last 2 weeks, we'll have various polls of topical questions coming up as we get into the discussion. The first one should be displaying on your screen right now. And we will have these polls come up, and then we'll be sharing the results throughout the conversation today as well. So please participate in those. And then the last thing, which I started with also, it's be ready to engage. We want this to be a conversation amongst a group of marketers here, higher education marketers in particular. So with that, I would actually love to turn to our participants for a few moments. And I would love for a few folks to introduce themselves potentially, share maybe what you're looking to get out of the conversation today. We've got the next 54 minutes together. Share your organization, your role, and what you're hoping to get out of the conversation today. So maybe we'll go ahead and get started. I mean, maybe we won't go through all, but we'll get started with a few. I see a few familiar names. Maybe we'll start with Jess Jenkins out of Arizona. So Jess, would you mind just doing a brief introduction?
Hi guys. Sorry I'm not sharing video quite yet. It's a little early here.
All good.
10 a.m. But yeah, I work as the digital marketing manager at the University of Arizona Foundation. So I'm particularly interested in learning not only what other institutions are doing broadly or how they're handling this, but specifically how it affects the fundraising enterprise. And it's certainly been an adventure for the last few weeks for us just to pivot marketing messaging and things like that. I know it's probably been the case for everyone, but I'm really glad to just have a chance to be around some like-minded individuals and have a webinar that's specific to this industry rather than just trying to apply, all of the, pretty basic advice for the private sector to what we do. So nice to see all you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jess. So great to have you on board. I also see, I think I see Abby from CMU. Abby, are you online? I know you've got quite a contingent from the CMU side as well.
We do, yeah. Hi, how are you? I'm the Director of Integrated Marketing for CMU, Central Michigan University, not Carnegie Mellon. And yeah, I was looking through the list of participants, seeing a lot of colleagues, so that's awesome. First of all, I want to say I'm only here until 1:30, unfortunately, because I have a meeting that starts then, but kind of looking to commiserate. But really just sort of, hear what other folks are doing. This has changed what we're doing substantially, and not just short-term or long-term, but really trying to make some good learnings out of the things that we've had to spin up really quickly. So how do we carry that forward and bring ourselves into a newer space? Because I don't think we're ever going to go back to where we were. Not saying ever go back campus. Pardon me, that was metaphorical.
No, it's we get what you mean, and it is really been interesting times, and I think commiserate's probably a fair word to be be using amidst all of this. So absolutely, so great to have you and the team on board. Looks like Matt is on the line. I think maybe from the University of Akron. Matt, would you mind introducing yourself? You know, as I said that, I think I might have just lost him. Santana, looks like you might be on the line. Would you mind doing a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm Santana Naidu, Chief Marketing Officer at Indiana State University. And like Abby mentioned, we're all in the same boat and looking forward to kind of hearing and sharing some things as well.
Very good. We could probably spend the whole session here doing introductions. Would one or two more additional folks, I would love just to hear, you know, maybe a brief introduction and what you're hoping to get out of the session today to make sure we really tailor the discussion on the right things. Anybody else want to hop in here?
I'll introduce myself. I'm Paul Taylor. I'm an architect in Cleveland, Ohio. I know some of you Fathomers pretty well now. And you know, we do all different types of project types, and higher ed is one of them. And I just really love to learn and want to understand how to best help my clients through this kind of crazy time. So.
Great, Paul. So great to have you. Thank you very much. Fantastic. And I'm going to create space later on in the conversation to get introduced to more folks, but I also don't want to take away from, you know, the quick perspective that we're going to offer as it relates to the higher ed space. So as we start to transition, and the format of the conversation is going to go as follows. We've got about a 60-second overview on Fathom, so you know who you're speaking with today. And then we're going to transition into a quick take. And Brittany Trafis, one of our lead experts here at Fathom, is going to share that. And then we're going to open it up for a discussion. So just to give you a feel for what's ahead here. So to give a little bit of context on Fathom. So as you see on your screen, we're digital marketers who believe a strong strategy starts with deep roots. And it's really in three areas. The first is making sure we're deeply rooted in your business. And especially as we have this conversation on higher education today, we bring a lot of experience working with all types of higher education institutions, but we recognize that every institution is unique. So we'll ask the right questions and work to partner to understand the nuances of your organization to offer the right strategies in collaboration with you. We then pair that with our own deep expertise in digital. And really what that offers is an opportunity to bring a critical perspective of what might work, what might not work, and really what's around the corner as it relates to your business and digital. And at the end of the day, it's all about driving outcomes. And that couldn't be more present than it is in this world. We have to drive clear outcomes. We have to measure them and make sure we're focused on driving results that matter at the end of the day. To give a bit more context of Fathom is, you know, it's about you, it's about us, it's about what we will do together. We work with a lot of institutions in higher education. It's 30 plus across 12 different states, and it really covers the board of private, public, trade schools, and so on. Beyond higher education, we work within other industries as well, but we wanted to focus that today. And it really covers the gamut of all things within the digital space. So today's conversation will cover all types of different areas in digital, but it's SEO, it's paid search, it's marketing automation and analytics and content and so on. And all to, at the end of the day, drive outcomes and are focused on things that matter most to your business. In higher education, it's a lot around, I mean, yield is the topic of conversation right now. We're heavily in the middle of it. Student recruitment is huge. Class shaping is an important strategy for a lot of institutions to make sure you have the right mix of students within your cohorts, as well as the alumni and development side. I know Jess from University of Arizona represents that perspective, and all the way throughout that student life cycle is where we engage. So enough about Fathom. What I want to do is introduce you to two of our higher education experts that we're going to have joining us on the conversation today. The first I want to call out is Amanda Klitsch. Amanda is one of our digital strategy consultants here. She's been with Fathom right around 5 years at this point, and she serves as the lead strategist on a variety of higher education clients today. So you will be able to tap into her expertise working with lots of different institutions. And she is going to be joined by Brittany Trafis. Brittany Trafis is our Executive Vice President of Client Partnerships at Fathom. She's also been with Fathom around 5 years. And prior to Fathom, Brittany brings some client-side experience in higher education that she had at Cleveland State University, as well as spent a little bit of time working with a tech firm, a marketing tech firm based in the area. So without further ado, let me transition it over to Brittany and Amanda to offer a quick take on what we're seeing in higher education today.
All right. Well, good morning / good afternoon to everybody. So we'll make this quick because I know a lot of the points that you had mentioned earlier is really sharing and talking with each other, and that's the whole goal of the roundtable. But three main points really come to mind for me as I'm, talking with institutions, and one is the uncertainty. So we're all unsure what the future holds right now. We're all feeling it personally, professionally, and our students are in the same exact boat. And EduVentures, who's a partner of ours, actually came out with a new report yesterday where they did survey students to understand what the effects of COVID were on their decision to go to school. And not surprising, a lot of what they're feeling right now is they are missing out on those senior year activities as they were looking forward to prom and graduation and all the things that we were able to enjoy. But also very top of mind for them isn't what school that they're going to choose, but if they're able to go to school, if they may have to defer their enrollment. They are feeling that financial pinch that their family is feeling right now. And it is a big decision of theirs. And so as we usually at this time of year, we're in full yield mode. We've gotten really good at identifying which students we think are going to yield and who we should target in case they're not going to. And at this point, we have to be communicating with every single student and being very proactive and hyper-personalized. Because at this point, we're not sure which students are going to ultimately yield. The other is we actually have an opportunity right now. So I think Abby had hit on like some of these quick spinning things. I'm sure all of you are in the same boat of having to act really quick and getting things into the market. But students are still interested in hearing from us. So we're still seeing increase in terms of search demand. We're seeing our lower CPMs, high engagement, but there's always a but, right? But conversions are down. And that just is an indicator to us that students aren't ready to make a decision at this point. They're really in that exploratory phase, which is okay. That's all right. So my challenge is to us, and I hope to have a conversation about it today too, is how do we set that focus on the class of 21? So as we're thinking about, we have to yield 2020, but also how can we use this as an opportunity to really build that awareness factor with our class of 2021, 2022, even 2023? And then last but not least, the risk, right? So there's that long-term risk. We're not sure, again, what the future is holding for us, but adjusting our messaging and approach is really key here. So the students are feeling it. And so that appropriate tone in our messaging and really leaning into their emotions right now and being supportive. So a lot of us have gone virtual with our appointments and our meetings. Now, how do we start to turn that into our messaging and how we're engaging with them through our other channels to let them know that we are here and we understand and we want to be supportive in helping them make that decision to be able to enroll in school.
So you see another poll question on the top of the screen here. We have, Joe, if you could share the results of the first poll. I found this to be actually very interesting that I think is worth as a jump off point here. So well, the first questions in which we had, and I've got a visual of it, is, here it is right here. Do you believe the current pandemic will have a lasting impact on higher ed? We're at a full 100% here. So, and the next, do we think that the current pandemic impacts your long-term marketing strategy? We're at 90%. Let's start the conversation right there. I'm interested, how do you believe that this current pandemic is going to, why is it going to have a lasting impact, and in which ways? And how is it going to impact your marketing strategy? And I think this is intended to be an environment to hear from people at other institutions. So I would love to hear from you. What do you see? What's driving your thoughts here? I know, Abby, you got to run soon, so maybe I'll kick off with you.
Yeah, sure. I was just unmuting actually for the exact same reason. In terms of, how it's going to shape it significantly, I think that's still yet to be seen. In terms of all the particulars, certainly we see a little bit more reticence to yield. And, the interesting thing for me is this confluence of, the NAC rules changing in terms of yield strategies. And then this has really made us think really hard about what does that yield and melt strategy look like? What needs to change? And then in terms of, how significantly it would change our market strategy, this is a really good, and I guess I would use the term kick in the pants to really dig into digital opportunities. We are located in literally the center of the state of Michigan. So, we're 2 hours away from Detroit. We're an hour and a half away from Grand Rapids. And so, having students come out to visit campus, it's a full day commitment. And so this has actually been kind of nice to I would have liked a little bit more lead time to figure it out, but we've been doing live streams for virtual visits and things like that, which is, we're getting more and more competent and confident as we go along. But definitely, as we started out on that process, it was agreed upon by all of us that this is the start of something we're going to carry forward, regardless of when, stay at home, stay safe orders are lifted, that this has given us sort of a push into a world that we wanted to be in anyway, and just hadn't found the time or space to do it. So just sort of continuing along that path is what I'm seeing.
And Abby, what are you seeing the students being most interested in engaging in? Like what's, as you quickly trying to spin up different things, what are you seeing?
We've had a lot of, we were really happily, I don't want to say surprised, but we were happy with the amount of folks we had engaging on that first live stream. And it was about student life for the most part. It was, how do I register for orientation, and what am I going to experience there? And what about housing, and how do you select a roommate? And it was all very much community based. Whereas there wasn't a lot of, so the second stream that we did was our colleges and what they offer. And while we did have, a larger group to start off, they weren't as engaged with questions. They weren't, I'm talking like it was just on fire, the comment section, with lots of questions the first time, and the second time it wasn't. So it seemed like community and student life was really top of mind for these students.
I think that's a really great point. I guess I'm curious if others are seeing that that need for more community and wanting to talk about that community that they'll be entering more so than ever.
I guess I would also offer too, right before I have to leave, we also just started a closed Facebook group for our admitted students. We had historically used things like School's app, or Zeme was one of the things we were considering, I guess. I say I guess because I wasn't there at that time, or wasn't here at that time, but it has taken off like wildfire, and the students are really, again, it's that community. They're wanting to talk to each other and connect, and I think maybe it's coming from a place of wanting to have hope that they can meet these people in the next few months,
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and I think that connects to actually some of what we're seeing within our client base. Obviously, we partner with you guys, as well as some of the research we're seeing. But I'd love to hear from other institutions. Central Michigan just shared, what they're seeing. How about others?
I add two quick things here. One is I've seen a renewed and a focus on presidential communications, and communications just coming from any sort of authority figure that we can find for ourselves right now. So that is really kind of pivoted how we've been responding, just learning how to, present these things in an effective way. And, obviously recorded Zooms, sending our videographer in to explain how lighting works, just down to those creative brass tacks to make it a nice thing. And then beyond that, I would say you, Abby, you kind of touched on this, but I see that digital as a channel may have, at the outset of my role at the foundation, may have been seen as kind of a novel thing, which is crazy to say in 2019, 2020. But I think that will forever be gone, which is great in some ways. There's a silver lining to know that the channel is going to have to be taken seriously from an investment standpoint and resourcing, specifically on the IT side. I think that is no question, which I think is kind of a silver lining. It sucks that it took a kick in the pants, like you say, to get us there, but I hope that I won't have to fight, to make the case for some of these things in the future, just because they're going to be the only option.
Do you feel like some of the digital pieces that you've started and those Zoom conferences, have those allowed you to have more personalized conversations with students? Maybe in a way that when that wasn't so much of an option, you weren't able to connect with them in that way? Yeah,
I would say particularly the university as a whole just embarked on the rollout of a sort of centralized social media management platform that, we've named Trellis, but really it's a sort of a customized version of Salesforce Social, and that allows colleges and units and programs and every social media page under the sun that we've had to sort of rein in have some input. So when those things are live streaming, there's a more immediate method by which people can, that the institution can deliver canned messaging so that we're all saying the same thing, not going like, I think you're getting a refund, or I don't know, or you should ask. So we're not kind of spinning our wheels and frustrating people. So I think that that's really helped in sort of just scaling how we speak personally one-to-one with students. And having having less to do directly with students. One thing that we've been focused on, for example, in the first week of this, we launched a student emergency fund. So that was designed to help students who are just like sort of left high and dry with rent and bills and no job and, travel expenses to get back home to their families. So we just in the course of 3 weeks raised $376,000 just for that specifically. I think that's where it stands, just from a crowdfunding standpoint. So there was a lot of, but the key for us was to actually quickly, which is something we struggle with in other times, I think, was to quickly update donors on how the money is being used. So working with the bursar's office and with student affairs to make sure that there was an application process that was expedited, that there was a way for us to actually within a week say, look, 900 students have taken advantage of this so far for reasons like this. And then we've been really working hard. I think that it's a whole new territory, but trying to sort of see if our videographer can set up a Zoom call with one of the students to tell their story, or, do an interview over email, just so that we can kind of keep the content machine filled. So that's really the mode we're in right now, is how can we actually connect one-to-one with students and develop some digital content that we can kind of keep the train going.
Yeah, Jess, that's great context and perspective there. It's, it's interesting because, we're seeing a lot of increased engagement and interest across lots of our different clients, and certainly in higher education, especially as you think about this fund you did to help others. And there is a come together effect that is certainly happening. And we see that also, we work with a lot of health systems that are connected to higher education, Stanford and UCLA and so on. And those health systems are also seeing a renewed sense of giving to help others in a time like this. So no, that's a theme that we are seeing across the board as well. Brittany, it looks like you were going to jump in here.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to open up that question to the larger group, as Jess has shared some of the digital changes that are experiencing. And I just loved your comment of, you had said like digital historically was novel, and now it's becoming more of a necessity. And what are other, I'd like to hear from others on here on how you're seeing digital really change and play a critical role in communicating with students.
I think we've got a few folks that have joined the line that haven't had a chance to introduce themselves yet. And I'm not sure if Matt, are you back from the University of Akron? Looks like you may have.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties.
Hey, no problem. So Matt, I would love to get your perspective, and if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief introduction and just sharing a bit about what you're seeing here.
Yeah, I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for University Communications and Marketing. You know what? I came in right at the end where they're saying you're using some more video. We've used a couple different presidential videos. We have a new president at the University of Akron. So, he's definitely in the honeymoon period, which is good. And so he's, we've done a few that we produced directly to students and the campus community in general that have gone over really well. So I think that's been helpful. But yeah, I think obviously digital is becoming more and more important. We've had a couple print pieces because I work in the creative services, so we still do the printed view book and the printed postcards, and we had a postcard ready to go out. It had a visit day on it that was canceled, so we had to kind of scrap it for now. It definitely allows you to pivot a lot faster, obviously, change dates, move things, where a lot of the old stuff that we relied on in the past are just not able to do that. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. But I think, and then we are producing a few more videos. There's going to be we're doing a crowdsourced video that's mimicking our new marketing campaign that we had that we're just finishing up, but it's going to be crowdsourced from everybody from their house. We're having people submit videos, and we're having our editor go at it right now. So that should be interesting. We'll see how that turns out in the next few days.
Matt, you mentioned those presidential conversations, and Jess, you did as well. I'm interested, is that type of communication from the office of the president or someone in authority at the university, are those things that you typically see high engagement with? Or is that a change in mentality for this year? I think back to my own college experience, and presidential emails were something I'm scrolled right past. So I'm interested if that's a change you're seeing in that kind of need for authority and need for community.
Well, in our case, as you know, we're on our, I don't even want to count. We've had quite a turnover. So depending on which president it was some like to be more out front than others. Mm-hmm. And I think President Miller does not mind being, because I think a lot of people were looking for somebody to, take the helm that was decisive, and just because of all the different things we've gone through, some of the other ones that we've had. So I think that it is reassuring to them, and I think that's what they do want to see. But you're right, it would depend on the institution on whether or not that would be the case. But in this case, and at this time, it seems to work.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think typically donors maybe are a little more tuned in to those sorts of communications. So there might have, I can't speak to the president's office and their response to it totally, but I would imagine there's a little bit of pivoting that had to be done in order to appeal to a student audience a little bit more, and to sort of speak from their perspective. And it's interesting because we find an opportunity to, more so than really ever, to tie into the sort of rumblings in the news in the news beyond what is happening on campus. So the president's getting involved in we can kind of tie in. I'm finding at least this is rife and a good opportunity, trying to find positives where we can, wherein researchers are engaged in developing antibody tests or 3D printing masks, or so a lot of those positive stories coming out of a research institution, and even like sort of smaller feel-good stories about students coming together. So that's been something we've been able to take advantage of, and also I think has been made clear to the sort of leadership that, you know, they highlight those sorts of messages when they can. So that sort of contributes to a sense of community and pride, especially when you see like the president's meeting with the governor to, you know, plan to make these tests, you know, so it feels really prescient and like important. At least it feels that way, but.
You know, Jess, one of the things that you brought forth when we kicked off the conversation today is in the introduction, talking about the idea of messaging needing to pivot. And that's the conversation has started to go in that direction, the who the message is coming from and what they're engaging with, as well as, you know, what's on, you know, Abby from CMU shared, what's on the mind of the potential student today. You know, we're seeing, at least on the students that's coming in, you know, as we're really thinking about yield right now, there's a lot of conversation around community. And you think of all these high school seniors that have lost so much of such a precious, you know, senior year. I actually have 2 nephews and a niece all graduating high school this year. Well, I think they're graduating. They're getting their degree. I don't know if they're actually going to walk in graduation. That's, I think, to be determined. They actually all live in Michigan. But at any rate, it's just a really interesting time. And, you know, Brittany, I think we just saw some research from our friends over at EduVentures that said, hey, what's going on in the mind of the incoming class? Can you bring some of that perspective forward?
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share the report afterwards too. So top of mind for them, the loss of community came through, not being able to be at the events, the sporting events, prom, a lot of the things that you think about for their senior year. So they are missing that social aspect. They're at home, they're removed, they are getting it virtually, but they're missing that community, as we would put it in our words. But they're feeling the impact of their family too. They are very aware of the financial strain that, you know, some of their families are feeling right now. And so they want to make that decision to go to school, but they're conscious of wanting to do what's right for their family. You know, one of the conversations that even came up yesterday in the webinar about this report was, you know, how does it affect out of state? And everyone's not sure, but there is that fear that they may stay close to home, not just because of cost, which is obviously a big piece of it, but also because of wanting that community, wanting to stay home, feeling safe, instead of going too far away from home in case this does hit again.
So if I remember the research right, the 2 biggest topic areas on the minds of high school seniors entering in their decision making were financial aid and student life, and those were the 2 biggest topic areas, at least the research showed. I'd love to get the voice of the group, as you guys are really working through your yields right now. And I know Abby shared a little bit of that perspective in terms of a conversation that needs to be tailored now. It needs to be interested and focused on the reality of today's world. But student life is really on the mind of their particular you know, student group that they're in cohort they're trying to yield. How about the rest of you guys? And I know we've got a few folks that we haven't had a chance to lend much of a voice into the conversation. I know, you know, Santana, you were able to introduce yourself. But we'd love to hear from you. You know, I think we've also got Ashley. I think you're from, you know, Western Carolina. Would love to hear from you. So we'd love to get a couple additional voices in the conversation as it relates to what are you hearing as you're navigating this time of yield.
Sure. You know, for us, a couple things. One's that related to NSO or orientation. I'm kind of curious to see how this all translates. We used to traditionally have a 2-day on-campus orientation. Now it's all going online. And so that's something that we're trying to plan for and see how that impacts our, you know, melt after that. Then specific to the other topic on kind of the campus experience, I think I noticed now a few other universities have already kind of beat us to it, is we started to plan around a 1-credit class that students can kind of take and get a sense of, meet other friends, talk to some of the professors. So we have 3 classes that we just sent out yesterday. So I'm kind of curious to see what kind of interest that we get. We saw initial click-throughs pretty good, but I'm kind of curious to see how the sign up is or if that class makes an impact. We've tried to segment it out. So we're offering some to students who have already confirmed versus the ones that haven't confirmed, to offer this as a way to kind of get them to move. So those are a couple things that I wanted to add to the mix and see if others have any thoughts or comments for that.
I mean, I can share that. I mean, I think that's one thing that we're seeing as a industry as a whole is moving more towards like those certifications. So I know the 1 credit hour is a little bit different, Santana, but lots of schools are spinning up more online classes, more certifications as a way for students, even our traditional, non-traditional students, to be able to engage with us during this time when they are home at a more, financially sound decision. I think one question I have for you too, Santana, is, are you seeing any difference in terms of, transfer students engaging with you? So that's an audience I know we haven't talked about yet, but they also usually cling to a sense of community.
Yeah, transfer, unfortunately, we actually have a meeting tomorrow with kind of the president and some of the VPs to talk more about transfer specific and what we want to do differently. But we have not, for us, have not yet tried anything different for them. I do hear kind of through secondhand some of the other institutions are contacting maybe their previous students more aggressively with all the NAC changes that they have, but we have not done anything yet.
Yeah, I think to that point, to open it up to the group with the NAC changes, that was what we originally had thought was going to be the big game changer of 2020, not seeing COVID coming in our way. But with NAC now we're able to target those admitted, not enrolled students from previous years to try and get them to transfer back to our schools. Has anybody on the line seen success or any key learnings there that you'd like to share? So I'm going to pick on Amanda then to just share some learnings that we've seen with some of our clients.
Yeah, I think Santana started to touch on it, but really in the transfer realm, having the ability to reach out to those previously admitted students, I think is a huge new opportunity that comes with some of these changes. Being able to reach out to those students who already had that expressed interest and already have that built awareness and understanding of your university, and reconnecting with them in that transfer format, I think is so valuable, especially as we think about this greater need for community and the potential need that students might have had to move very quickly back home from where they were. Maybe they feel that distance. And there's some caution around that. So that's something that we're working with clients on today to really build out some of those focus campaigns on students who were previously admitted, but also that are from a nearby geographic area where there's some value propositions to that, where we can be speaking to the comfort of home and staying close to home. And helping those students understand the resources available to them specifically as a local student. I think being able to provide that level of comfort and support during this time can really help that transfer student experience when normally they're considering transfer credits and there's other factors that play. This comfort of home piece is new this year, along with those NAC changes. So I think it's opened the door for some unique opportunities. Outside of transfer, we're really seeing with the admitted student audience, there's kind of a divide. There's the universities who are actively going after some of those admitted students who've said, no, I'm not attending. And then there's others who are kind of still sitting to see what happens. We're finding that the more hyper-personalized those communications can be to those individuals who have been admitted, maybe said no, maybe again, they're really local. And there's some unique value propositions there. Being able to prioritize those specific students and making sure you're having as close to that one-on-one communication. We've talked for years about how higher education needs to focus on making sure every student feels really special, and that this feels, at least in undergraduate recruitment, they're looking for that comfort and that they get me moment. This is no different, and it's really a unique opportunity, I think, to create that one-on-one connection with the potential students who are interested in your university.
I would add to that too is making it easy to get the information that they need. So I know some of the institutions I've been working with, as we've been launching even a transfer campaign, is just making it so easy for them to get the information that they need so that they can then continue that conversation with you. And I think that's something that we see overall, but is becoming more and more important regardless of which audience we're talking to.
I think we've had a really robust conversation from the state school perspective, and that's been fantastic. I'd love to see if we can get a voice from the private school perspective as well. Charlene, I wanted to invite you into the conversation to see if you had any particular perspective of how COVID's really impacting you over at Laverne in the private private school space.
Sure. So I'll leave my video off because I was just planning on listening in. So thanks for.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm actually from the advancement office at University of Laverne, and I have a marketing and communications background, but from corporate. And so I have a really interesting personal interest and perspective on how we utilize digital marketing tools, actually underutilized digital marketing tools in nonprofit work in general, and specifically in higher education. I've sort of been like the constant badger behind everybody around our advancement work, that we could be having so much greater ROI and impact and reach if we would just get on board with what the corporate sector does in terms of digital marketing. So I've heard that trend sort of coming out today, and I love that everyone else is sort of catching on as well. Something we've noticed is I've heard several of my colleagues talk about sort of being targeted themselves for master's and doctoral programs through neighboring institutions. And that's an opportunity for me to remind everybody, yeah, because you're a target audience. And that is how amazing digital marketing can be and how effective it can be. And someone else here was talking about postcards and some of these. I don't want to negate the sort of personal connection of handwritten notes. It's something I currently still do. I actually spent last night volunteering some time. I'm also an alumna of the University of Laverne. So I did my MBA there. So they did a call out from our admissions department for anyone to lend some time to handwrite notes to students who have been admitted to sort of increase that retention. And so we wrote personal notes to about 15 different students who have been admitted, just talking about our experiences at the university, the value, all of that. So I think there is definitely a place for that as well. Our biggest struggle at the University of Laverne is we are a Hispanic serving institution. We are a private liberal arts college with about 1,500 undergraduate students and about 6,000 students overall. An opportunity I really see for us is we've always had a huge percentage of adult learners through what we call our CAPA program. And we saw in the last recession a resurgence of adult learners going back to school because they were out of work and they were looking for continuing education opportunities to complete those degrees or start those degrees they never started. And the University of Laverne was great at that time. And we actually did very well through that recession because those were programs we were already instituting. And then, so that's something that from sort of a historical alum background and from an advancement perspective, I'm always looking for ways to, everyone's sort of in crisis mode. And I've been in the mindset of, we need to get out of crisis mode and look at proactivity mode. So what are we doing well? And let's talk about that, because I think we're all caught off guard by this. So this is a learning moment for us all, right? That we didn't really know what to do. And our immediate concern was our students. Same concerns that you all are experiencing. Are we going to get tuition reimbursements? What about walking? Is there going to be a commencement? You know, and then we were already having some enrollment issues coming into spring. So this is truly a crisis for our institution because we expect to see a greater fall off because of a large percentage of underserved students, so low income socioeconomic status. And 90% of our students receive financial aid, Pell Grants, Cal Grants, that sort. So really how we target those conversations with those students, retain them. It's everyone at the institution. The nice part about everyone sort of being home and looking for ways to help is we're able to lend ourselves to admissions and enrollment. And we're sort of saying, tell us what we can do, because enrollment, as you all know, impacts us all. We're talking furloughs and layoffs and these kinds of things. And so everyone's passionate about our institution, passionate about the students that we serve and the education we're able to give this sort of predominantly minority group of students. So how do we target them? How do we talk to them? How do we retain them? Especially in light of there's no guarantee that we'll be able to return to campus in the fall. And something I've been talking a lot about is a colleague brought up the case that, well, a lot of students will look at other online programs because they can go there cheaper than a four-year school. So if I'm going to go online, why don't I just go to any other school? And I said, and this is the moment for us to reinforce the message of the value of the education you get from our institution, and that this moment of online and virtual learning will pass. It will pass. So your first term may be online, but it would be online regardless of where you go. So I would love to see, from a strategic marketing perspective, us talking about those bigger picture, long-term, when this passes, what do you have in your hand in terms of a degree? What institution did you go to? And still stick to that in this time. A lot of our students are regionally based students. So that's sort of a benefit to us. We have a lot of international students, but we're predominantly regionally based. So that staying close to home vibe that I'm hearing from other folks as well actually benefits us. So I think that there's an opportunity from an advancement perspective. There's definitely more need when we're talking about donors. We too have done a student emergency fund as well. We've raised $115,000 for that. We have a lot of students who are in need of support right now. So it's this balance between how do we support them, but how do we continue to have them support us by enrolling and coming back to school, you know?
No, it's a great perspective all around. And, just a couple of points of emphasis, and it really speaks to what Jess was saying, 30 minutes ago. It took a pandemic to get people to pay attention to digital and newer ways to engage and connect with folks. And there is going to be lasting impact that comes from that. And there is a reality is there is going to be another side of this. And, preparing for that is important. And as you look at past economic cycles, and most recently 2008, 2009, higher education did pretty well. Usually works counter-cyclical to the economy. Unemployment goes up, usually investment education goes up. It'll be interesting how that plays with the stay-at-home component and how long stay-at-home is in our vernacular. It certainly has for the last 5 weeks. But how long that goes, and if this goes in waves, from a medical standpoint, I think will play very interesting. And it just all speaks to the reality that there's so much changing around us, and there is, we can react to it, or we can respond to it. And, I think, Charlene, you really brought forth a perspective of let's take control and let's respond and seize this as an opportunity in many ways as we possibly can. So I know we're coming up on the end of our time here, and this has been a really fantastic conversation. I do want to pose one additional question here, and this is something that Paul brought forth as we kicked off the conversation today. Paul provides services into the higher education space. We at Fathom do, among others that may listen to this recording, webinar and so on. And I guess my question is, what advice do you give to your partners, your service providers, your agencies, your architects, your other collaborators that are outside of the university? What advice do you give to them on how to be the best partner to you during this time? Does anybody want to kick off here?
I could just jump in. I know that we have somebody installing some graphics in one of the buildings, and the building, they happen to be doing some other services on the building, and they volunteered to come in during this time, since their workers are working anyway, to install this mural on one of the walls. So it'll be there when the students return and the staff. So that that's nice. They're bending over backwards. We have printers that are deemed essential that are still printing if we want to do that at this point. So they're being as flexible as you can imagine, and that's been really helpful.
I would say help us resist the urge to flounder, because I think there's it's very easy right now to just stay in a holding pattern, and that can come from a myriad of places in our leadership and our teams, and so whatever you can do to sort of help us find forward movement or message that. I know that's been my struggle. It's just trying to get fear, the conversation, and to help people feel confident in being decisive about making changes, especially during a frazzled and uncertain time. So, yeah.
That's a great perspective. Anyone else want to weigh in or pull any additional thoughts from your end?
I don't have all the same expertise that you folks have. However, we are all in the same boat right now, and that boat for higher ed is specifically web-based, distance-based. And hopefully that does go away sooner than later. Culture is king. And how can you all make this distance-based higher education learning use all the tools? So not just a program that you can do distance, but that it's built for distance, so that you have all the tools, you have all the right technology in place, and then you have everything that's making people connect to one another. So that's not just staring at a professor on a screen talk, and then there's no interaction between other people. But how can you create that culture so that people feel like they're actually belonging to something important? It's really easy to have the rah, rah, rah spirit of being at university at a football game or in the student center, but how do you create that culture online?
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and I think that's I think that's something to lean into during this time. And we've talked about, hey, as we kicked off the conversation, this pandemic is impacting higher education for the long haul, right? And many other industry as well. And this has been a really great conversation. I really appreciate everyone's participation. We've had a fair amount of interest, leading up to this conversation. We may create space to do another one of these dialogues if you guys are interested. Also, if there's something from this conversation that you want to take forward, if you want to connect with somebody else you may have heard on the line, if you want to connect with myself or one of our experts at Fathom, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help make that connection for you. We're in this fully together, navigating working from our home offices, working amidst the uncertainty of the world around us, but we do have the power to take a lead during this time and realize there is another side to this, and prepare and plan and lead forward on this. And in that vein, like I said, we will look for future opportunities to continue to bring our higher education marketers together. Just so you know what is around the corner on our series here. So, we're doing these remote roundtables every Thursday at 1:00 Eastern time. Next week is focused on social media that converts. The week following is really focused on SEO, and there's been a fair amount of change that's happened around the SEO space, especially with COVID-19 and Google's response to that. So we'll be diving into that. And then we'll be doing an industry-focused perspective on healthcare 3 weeks from now. So once again, I just want to say thank you to the collaboration and participation of everybody on the line today. Feel free to reach out if we can support you in any way, and hope everybody has a good rest of your day. Thanks.